I'm John Catalinotto. I'm one of the managing editors of Workers' World. I want to speak tonight really just to introduce the topic of the impeachment, which is an ongoing struggle that's involving important sectors of the ruling class right now in an attempt to remove Trump from office. As I said, this is just a beginning discussion. It's going to go over some of Trump's crimes and a little bit more about Biden, since Biden has kind of dropped out of the sight of most of us for a while. And it's based mainly on a couple of editorials that were in Workers' World this week. Now, is there anyone here that is unaware of the crimes of current U.S. President Trump? You're laughing. Right. Unaware. Anyone here unaware?
Which one?
Okay, that's what I mean. Obviously, I don't have to spend too much time on this. I'll just go through a few to refresh your memories. Internationally, he imposed sanctions on or threatened war against Iran and Venezuela, Cuba, and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and sided with Saudi Arabia and Israel in repressing people in the Middle East. He started a trade war with China. He shut down legal asylum, jailing migrants and separating parents from children at the border, and restricted entry into the United States in general for Muslims. He appointed misogynist and anti-abortion judges to federal courts and even to the Supreme Court. His administration defunded education, opened national lands to exploitation, and removed safety regulations. Of course, Bush Sr., Clinton, Bush, and Obama before him did a lot of that too, especially internationally. Bush started, Clinton bombed Yugoslavia. Bush Jr. Started the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, horrible wars. And during the Obama administration, they destroyed Libya and killed the leadership. They started a situation in Ukraine that has led to civil war. And they did a lot of other stuff in the Middle East and Syria and in other parts of the world. The Trump administration, Trump distinguished his administration by doing it all openly, blatantly, boasting about his misogyny and racism, his bigotry and disdain for people with disabilities. He opened the door to the worst racist and fascist scum to mobilize. I don't need to repeat what he said, nor do I want to. We got used to presidents who, when they committed crimes against the people of the world, were quieter about it. Bush is very out there with it. And that's why he's very much on our minds, and we hate him for that, and that's a bad thing itself. Yet despite all the crimes that Trump has committed, and many of which he admitted to, and which he also, you can add to that, that he very openly uses his office to enrich himself and his family, what are the Democrats charging him with? First, they investigated for a couple of years his relation with the Russian president, attempting to link Putin with aiding Trump's election. This attempt at impeachment failed. Now the impeachment charges involve Trump's attempt to use a U.S.-installed Ukrainian regime against Joe Biden, who is one of the more likely Democratic candidates for president next year, and probably the one that Trump considers his main rival. So let's talk a little bit about Biden, because he's probably dropped off our charts. It was useless to attack him a lot before this week, because there were 20 other people running the Democratic candidacy. You didn't know who you would have to clarify where they stand. Biden is a faithful servant of U.S. imperialism, and nowhere was this more clear than with his role intervening in and interfering with Ukraine's politics to benefit U.S. finance capital. The establishment magazine Foreign Affairs made this clear, writing right before the last election, quote, "No one in the U.S. government has wielded more influence over Ukraine than Vice President Joe Biden," end quote. The article even called Biden, quote, the Obama administration's point person on Ukraine policy, end quote. At the time, Biden had been working in tandem with Hillary Clinton, who was Secretary of State until 2013, and then with John Kerry, who was Secretary of State when the U.S. boosted the anti-Russian grouping in the Ukraine, leading up to what was called the Maidan Revolution there. They got rid of somebody who was more pro-Russia and substituted him with somebody who was more against Russia and dealing with Europe and the Western Europe and the United States. And in order to do it, the U.S. allowed a lot of the most fascist organizations in Ukraine to become part of this new government in order to throw out the old one. And it wound up with a civil war in the Ukraine because a couple of the provinces on the east did not want to be part of that kind of country. Biden's role was to rally support for the regime in Kiev against Russia and the regions of the eastern Ukraine that rebelled against the U.S.-backed right-wing regime. It was in his hands to withhold aid if the competing forces in the new Ukrainian regime strayed from serving U.S. corporate and strategic interests. The 2016 Foreign Affairs article noted Biden's, quote, long track record of promoting a robust American role in Eastern Europe, from supporting NATO's enlargement to pushing for U.S. military intervention in the Balkans in the 1990s. So he was an imperialist politician carrying out the interests of U.S. imperialism in the way it was understood by the main strategists of U.S. imperialism at that time. He took an active part in U.S. war-making, subversion, and political intervention. From 2014 to 2016, Biden acted as an old-time colonial governor for the U.S. in Ukraine. He got the new government a $17.5 billion International Monetary Fund package and guided the reorganization of the gas industry and the police force there. He oversaw privatization and austerity in service to finance capital, including raising the retirement age for workers. That's in Ukraine. He helped introduce fracking there. His son, Hunter Biden, I guess he was just somebody with the right talents, although I've read that he was a cocaine addict. But his son, Hunter Biden, became an executive in the gas production company, Burisma Holdings. That's a Ukrainian company. So Trump tried to show that Biden threatened the Ukraine's leader to serve the narrow interests of his family, to get out somebody who maybe was going to prosecute his son. I don't know what the story was in that. I don't think it's important to our understanding of what's going on. From our point of view, it's no less a crime against the Ukrainian people, however, to threaten that country's leader into imposing policies serving the general interests of U.S. monopoly capitalism than it is to do it to serve your family. Impeachment seems possible this time, perhaps also to Trump, who exploded against those Democrats attacking him. He, even though the Democratic Party is now seems to be committed to carrying out some sort of impeachment, including the leadership. Nancy Pelosi has made a change, it's a shift in that direction. But he singled out the squad, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the rest of the squad, plus Adam Schiff and Gerald Nadler, 4 women of color and 2 Jewish men, and called them savages. Okay. So that's the way, that's the only thing I'll say that's the only quote I'll make from Trump. The president also hinted that his impeachment might bring on a civil war. In a way, that's his threat to try and stay in power. Now, is the ruling class tiring of Trump's incompetence and his itchy tweeting finger? But by the way, he has not yet, anyway, made a war. Note that. He did almost start one with Iran and then pulled back at the last minute. The first year of the Trump administration brought smiles to the faces of the ruling class because he cut taxes for the rich and the corporations and opened up new areas of the earth for wanton exploitation like Stephanie just described. That was carried on for 400 years. And he opened up new sources. But now they're smiling less. Business is shaky, and the boast to make U.S. America great again has cost the U.S. strategically and economically. He's alienated the U.S. imperialist junior partners. They smile at Trump, pay service to him, but they follow their own foreign policy and make their own deals. Even warmongers like John Bolton and generals like Mad Dog Mattis oppose Trump, perhaps because he fired them, along with the bulk of the editors of the New York Times and the Washington Post. The anti-Trump impeachment is filled with contradictions, as Fred Goldstein wrote in an article which we published in Workers' World Online, analyzing the impeachment, and I think you should look it up and read it. Maybe we'll have it next week in the paper. Trump's verbal crimes themselves are worthy of a mass struggle, unifying the working class to get rid of this president. But what's really needed is not a legal maneuver that replaces blatant Trump with subservient Mike Pence, but a mass movement against white supremacism that sweeps out the whole racist, bigoting, money-grubbing gang. Now, one thing I didn't bring out in my presentation before because I focused mainly on what I wrote and what we wrote in the editorials is that this impeachment campaign against Trump at the moment is being led by the state apparatus. It's the FBI and the CIA and who has started it all going against him because they brought up this, the whistleblower brought up, they exposed that he made this call to the Ukrainian president. So it's coming out of the state apparatus. I mean, you can see why they would be upset with him, something like what Vincent said, but whether or not he has a personality disorder, he is definitely, his actions have been unstable. You know, he hasn't begun a war, but he did almost begin one and then pulled back, which is probably even more upsetting for them. The ones who want the war are mad that he's tried to do it and then didn't do it, and the ones that don't want it wonder what's he going to do tomorrow. I mean, he's broken the kind of steady relations that have been built up with the European imperialist countries over 70 years, and that would be fine if it puts the U.S. on top, but if it's not putting the U.S. on top, then what is the ruling class getting out of his boasting and blundering? Not blundering is the wrong way. He does blunder, but I mean he boasts a lot, and he says he's going to do something dramatic, and then he pulls back and tries to make a deal and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know what the situation is exactly in a comparison like with the Nazis and Hitler and stuff, because it was a whole different situation in that there was a strong workers' party that threatened to take power, and Hitler had his own party that was strong. Trump does not have. Trump has a Republican Party, which supports him up to now. But they're not like a mobilization party. They're an electoral party, and they represent the ruling, big sections of the ruling class. They do not represent where you can mobilize masses of people and carry out an action and stuff like that. There are a lot of little fascist organizations all over the country, and they might do stuff, but that doesn't mean they are in a position to take power. I mean, I'm speculating now, so we got to really, this is just the beginning of a discussion of what's going on. But since it's been raised, I don't want to just leave it open that way. Because it's right now, it's the state, I mean, the State Department must hate him. Half of them are quitting. So they don't feel he's carrying out an effective policy for the interests of U.S. imperialism. How that's going to play out in the House and the Senate right now, we got to see. And right now, it's hard for us to find a way to intervene in it, but we have to be looking at it. If the masses were intervening, were struggling and saying, get rid of Trump because he says this, that, and the other, he's a racist, he's jailing people on the border, and you mobilize on that basis, then you can, you can move it in a progressive direction. Right now, it's not there.